Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our special Pride celebration for ELJ Editions Be Well series. I'm Nicole Tom, and I'm your host with Redacted Books. And we have three amazing featured readers joining us tonight from different parts of the United States. We have Steve Bellin-Oka, we have Caridad Moro-Gronlier, and we have Dior J. Stevens. And just to give everyone a really quick run of show before we start, each of the readers are going to read for about 15 minutes. And then we'll reserve a little bit of time at the end for audience Q&A. If you guys have any questions, if you want, you can start popping them in the chat. And we can collect the questions and address them at the end, or you can just wait until the end and ask your questions then. And I just respectfully ask everyone to please mute yourselves if you're not reading so that we can minimize background noise because we're recording this. And I know there are quite a few people who are interested in this reading that necessarily couldn't be here tonight because there are a lot of events going on with Pride. So I want to make sure we have a really solid, good recording so that other people can see if they weren't able to participate live tonight. Okay. So to kick us off, we're going to start with Steve Bellin-Oka. Here, weird glitch there. Do you guys hear that?
I think it's gone now.
Okay, sorry. All right. Steve Bellin-Oka's first book of poems, Instructions for Seeing a Ghost, which I happen to have a copy of right here. Everybody needs one of these, okay? Won the Vassar Miller Poetry Prize and was published by the University of North Texas Press in 2020. He is also the author of 4 chapbooks, most recently, Tell Me Exactly What You Saw and What You Think It Means. Winner of the Blue Mountain Review Southern Collective Experience Press LGBTQ+ Chapbook Prize and Provisio. Winner of the Antenna Press Open Chapbook Competition. He is the series editor for the Robin Becker series at 7 Kitchens Press, the founding editor of 14 Press, and the poetry editor at the Brookends Review. He has received fellowships from Yaddo, the Virginia Center for Creative Arts, the Vermont Studio Center, and the National Parks Art Foundation, and, the Tulsa Artist Fellowship. He lives in Tulsa with his husband. Everybody, let's welcome Steve.
Thanks so much, Nicole, and thanks everybody for being here. And in some ways, I feel like my bio is probably going to be better than my poems. so I thank you, Nicole, for that introduction. I am planning to read some new poems to start from a book that's coming out in 2025 that's called Shadow Generator. I'm going to read 2 of those new poems. I'm going to read some from the other books that Nicole mentioned. This first one is called Outside the Hippo, May 1987. And as some context, I came of age in the late 1980s when queer spaces and queer bars were really important because we didn't have anywhere else. There were no virtual spaces. And this poem references one of the oldest gay bars on the East Coast that sadly no longer exists. It was called the Hippo in Baltimore, Maryland, and the owners retired, and the place is now a CVS drugstore. But that's the reference in the title. Outside the Hippo, May 1987. Maybe God is doxing me. Everywhere the rain reminds me you won't speak to me again. Not in this life, and there is no other. When we rubbed our hips together that night on the disco floor in Baltimore, we both seemed hard enough to spark fire from stone. That's a metaphor, a dead one, like a clock's hands on a cliff's molten face. When you went back to your wife, I stumbled along the alley behind the club, throwing bottles high up against the brick face. It's raining men, the weather girls had said. But no, a shower of glass I caught on my tongue, and I still burn to put it to much better use. Thank you all very much. This is called Tricking with the God of Poetry. It's also from my new book. Tricking with the God of Poetry. 1. Some mornings you come from the shower and sit on the edge of the bed dripping. Early is the best time to work, you say. You won't stay for breakfast. The towel wrapped around your waist slides open, and on your thigh there's a tattoo, an arrow through a heart with someone else's name. 2. I like to think of you at 2-for-1 happy hour in that dive bar on Eager Street, leaning nonchalant against the rail, surveying the potentials. Your eyes pivot to the studious-looking one, his incongruent earring hinting at passions lurking like coral beneath a placid current. Something stops you, though, and after another 4 or 5 beers, you come here singing, drunkenly slipping your t-shirt over your head and throwing it on the hearth before you collapse on the floor. I'll lie beside you all night, only half listening to your soliloquy. You like me, you admire me, you like the feel of me. Like the way the moonlight spills like luminous milk across the hardwood floor. 3. The day I met you, the rhododendrons took notice, stood up pink and erect in the garden. But that night they dreamed themselves back into gnarled brown fists and froze. The black-eyed Susans have set up a tribunal in the backyard, and I can't hear anything now but their judgment handed down, grass shouting in approval. The wind gabbles against the branches as my bailiff shadow escorts me into the empty house. Please, whatever word you whispered in the flower's ears, whisper it to me. So, as I mentioned, I kind of came of age in the 80s during the AIDS pandemic, and this next poem also references the bar that I mentioned in my in the first poem that I read, the Hippo in Baltimore. But this is a sestina, and it's for a singer named Pete Shelley, who was a founding member of a seminal punk band in the 70s called the Buzzcocks. But he turned kind of electro disco new wave in the early 80s and had a big kind of worldwide hit with a song called Homo Sapien, which was banned in England because it was so explicitly gay. He died in 2018, and this is a poem for him. It's called Sestina for Pete Shelley, December 6, 2018. Nothing has to look like this December ground, the color of rust. Sometimes I make up names for the migrant children locked in border cages. Star, safe in my arms, never be afraid again. I'm not wanted either in this place I live. Another queer like the group that broke off from the caravan, banded together for safety like firewood. The first Bush banned any refugee with AIDS from kissing American ground. He died, and they shut the government down. None of the queers I know mourned. Instead, we thought of the quilt, the names of the lost stitched in wool as if they were infants again, in pink and sky blue thread. Some of them were stars, Rock Hudson, Halston, Freddie Mercury. Nureyev with spangled stars on his ballet tights. And you, I was 15 when the BBC banned Homo Sapien. I heard it on MTV, heard it again on the Hippo's dance floor, synthesized bass, the ground thump like a submarine's depth charge. I've forgotten the names of the boys I slept with, still telling myself I wasn't queer. No, that's a lie. I'd let any homo superior who turned his queer eye to mine take me in the parking lot under the stars. Like Tantalus, the virus was just out of reach. I embraced the names I'd always been called: faggot, fudge packer, sissy, banned from eternal paradise. 2 men's semen in streaks on the ground. Still, I hate how your death makes me remember this again, how I survived and hundreds of thousands didn't. Again, I think of irony, the underage, awkward 80s queer with his white Russian watered down, surveying the grounds for someone to take away his will to live, as if there were stars in his fingertips. No wonder the bouncer never once banned me, light brown hair and rat tail. His was one of the names I found on the matchbook and never called back. His name, I remember, it's on the AIDS quilt. That name again, Pete, your explicit song about the wish to be fucked, banned from the airwaves in England, but not here, where every queer with half a brain knew what you meant. We were stars, at least for 3.5 minutes. One night I ground a whole bottle of Paxil up and drank it dissolved. Again, I woke up and wasn't in the ground. My pupils dilated as stars. I burned the queer matchbooks, exhaled the dead names. This chapbook that Nicole mentioned, tell me exactly what you saw and what you think it means. That's the line that Grace Kelly's character speaks in Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window. And so there's some poems that are, based on Hitchcock films and other films in this book. And this is one of them. It's called Rope. And I don't know if you've seen that film, but it features a young the film was released in 1947, I think. So two young men are living together, coded very queerly and in a very negative fashion, in the sense that they are portrayed as killers. They think they're superior to everybody else, and they kill a friend of theirs for the thrill of it in the film. And this poem is Rope. You and I have lived together a long time, 25 years. When I had a piano, I played it, always in a minor key. That's me trying to make darkness visible. You walk with purpose through the silent rooms of our rented house. If I filmed you in long takes, you'd be standing at the sink, washing a chipped plate I've left there, or picking up the cat and holding her, murmuring. There's hip hop thrumming from a street 2 blocks away, and the Portalis wind splays a discarded plastic bag against the window. We know we're not better than anyone else. Still, we always fail to prove our own worth. What use we are more as we grow older. Clothes we lay on chairs every night for washing, for rearrangement, recombinant patterns of what we wear again. In thrillers, one person does the killing and another the sleuthing. I'm older than you. One day you'll watch me dying somewhere else, not in this house. You'll be standing in a doorway, sunlight behind you. You'll watch me in long, uninterrupted takes. There'll be no need to reload the camera with film. Somewhere far off, a dog will be barking as you pack up my books, secure them with twine. I'm going to read one from this chapbook called Proviso, which was a collaboration between me and a painter. But the idea behind the chapbook is, so my husband is a Japanese citizen, and as the last poem mentioned, we've been together for a long time, and I had no legal way to get him a green card in this country until 2015. So that was a good 10 to 12 years of our time being together, where we had to kind of put together makeshift ways of temporary visas for him to stay in the US that we eventually ran out of options for. And we lived in Canada for about 10 years. And so this chapbook is about when we came back to the US in 2015, after the Supreme Court decision that legalized same-sex marriages. And I was able to get him a green card, but we had to be interviewed and jump through a lot of hoops for the Department of Homeland Security. And all the poems in this chapbook are titled after questions that we were asked during our immigration interviews. And this first one is called, "What size bed did you and your spouse have?" That night after you'd gone to bed, the neighbor's cat pawed a pigeon down and tore off one of its wings. Across the street, more an alley really, the length of my extended body, another couple tangoed, cut out paper silhouettes in their darkened kitchen. Dance begins where language ends, a system of shadows throwing other shadows against a wall. One man dips the other, his blonde hair a pom-pom shaking with laughter. They think they will always be together, always in this kitchen or somewhere else in the apartment, their bodies, rooms spontaneously breaking into movement. Above their table, there's a print of Picasso's seated nude. Tomorrow, as if it were date-stamped milk, your visa expires again. Without you, will my legs disconnect from my body? Is my head completely behind me? I think I have time for one more from this chapbook, and it's called "How, When, and Where Did You Meet Your Spouse?" It's taken me 22 years to name what's happened. Name it as you name a squat, flat, flowering tree you see every day. In June, its branches explode with white petals like gauze on hundreds of clotheslines. One day, you ask the man you've fallen for, "What is the name of that tree?" Then you say it every time you see one. Dogwood, dogwood, Hana Mizuki. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Steve. That was lovely. And I really appreciate you joining us from Bread Loaf, because I know you have a lot going on. It's always such a pleasure to hear you read in your beautiful poems. And welcome. I know we have a few other people who've joined since the beginning. So thank you for being here. I see you, Judy and Candace. Thank you so much. So our next reader is my friend Caridad. Caridad Moro-Gronlier is a community-driven South Florida poet and the author of Tortillera poems, which I am so blessed to have a limited edition hardcover of. I'll drop the link to that in the chat as well in case any of you want to order that. It's the winner of the TRP Southern Poetry Breakthrough Prize, a 2022 International Latino Book Award Honorable Mention, a 2022 Eric Hoffer Book Award Honorable Mention, and a 2022 First Horizon Award finalist. Caridad's also the author of Visionware, published by Finishing Line Press, as part of its new Women's Voices series. She is the series editor of From the Writer's Room, Miami Nootropic, editor of Grabbed Poets and Writers Respond to Sexual Assault, Empowerment and Healing from Beacon Press in 2020, and the associate editor for Swim Every Day, online daily poetry journal for women identifying poets and its accompanying Swim reading series. Let's give Caridad a warm welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Nicole, and thanks everyone. That was just beautiful. Steve, I'm just overwhelmed. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Very excited to be here. Happy Pride, y'all, to everybody. And for those of us who are in Florida, that's like a revolution to even say that. So I'm saying it, and and I am a teacher in Florida. So after an entire school year, spent very carefully wording my words, I'm tired. So it's nice to say gay tonight. So I'm going to read some new stuff, a lot of new stuff. That's very exciting. When after the book has come out and you're staring at the page, it's exciting to have new stuff. So thank you for being here to hear that. And I am going to read a few from Tortillera that I don't usually read. So that should be fun. So I'm going to start with Elizabeth and I Negotiate. The title is the first line of the poem. Elizabeth and I negotiate over what we can afford once we get to Charleston, the holy city, where churches outnumber everything but bars. Our favorite one on Queen Street, where I kissed her on New Year's in 2015, insisting she shouldn't worry because we had a right to feel safe, even in the South. I felt entitled to splurge on a horse-drawn carriage where we cuddled in full sight, got us a king-sized bed and $30 shrimp and grits I paid for with cash I earned after withholding tax, like the couples to our left and our right. We dropped a bundle because after years spent hiding, we knew there were worse things to spend than money, like the time we could never get back. But this poem is not about that. Today, we gauge the exact amount of PDA we can afford. We take kissing off the table, tell each other it's a turn on to wait until we get inside. We feel brave when we allow ourselves the risk of holding hands in the holy city, where we are now relearning how to be afraid. Thank you. So this is a new one. To the childhood friend who shrugged when Roe v. Wade was overturned because she claimed to have no skin left in the game. You were the girl who leaned against the locked door of a McDonald's bathroom stall. Halfway through a double shift, you picked up for a pregnancy test you couldn't afford after tuition and rent. Your boyfriend, a light switch, off and on and off again. He didn't have your job, and your terror was no small thing. You knew too much about going it alone, living check to check, trying to break a mold too slight to contain the want for a life unlike your mother's, beholden to her husband, your father, a cruel supervisor at the girdle factory, duty-bound, strapped to a kid-ruled life that stopped being her own long before it even began. Your brown polyester uniform pooled on the floor, quivered with the current of your trembling. And even though the tiny window on that plastic stick never did turn pink, we had a plan in case it did. We had choices then, choices that did not include a bassinet. Although I had not yet found myself in the same predicament, I never did forget how cold your hands were as we waited at the sink. I held them in my own, kept you warm with my very skin. Thank you. Okay. So this is an ekphrastic poem that I wrote in conjunction with these really cool sisters that made these huge installations. And I wasn't used to seeing such industrial art from two women, right? So I had to write this poem on the fly. It was one of those, you have 2 hours, go. And I was like, how am I gonna get in? How am I gonna get in? So I imagined them in school together and what that must have been like for these two cool artistic chicks in high school. And being a high school teacher, I had a little bit of a moment of like this grand imagining. So this poem is for them, and it's about that. It's called Pipeline, an Imagining, for Dana and Ruth, after 5 Elements, KX2 Art. In school, they assigned shop class to the boys. We girls would watch them build what we weren't encouraged to touch. Their barely stubbled faces obscured by safety goggles, a welder's mask for the ones with a knack for the torch. We held their hands dusty with wood shavings, fingers solder singed after building a jewelry box or a wire bird cage. They walked us to home ec. We smiled when they dropped us off, classroom filled with cups and grams and ounces. We learned to knead a textbook apple pie, punched pre-approved patterns into our crusts, and sucked the burn off our fingers. We waited for our desserts to rise, but I never perfected a whisk-stiff lemon meringue, a recipe I could never remember. Unlike the sisters I recall sitting alone together at the back of the room, the ones who refused to poach an egg or cross-stitch a rose onto a pillow, who chose instead to build an installment of cylinders cast out of manicotti shells and foil stuffed with a glistening custard made from acrylic paints they bought with their allowance, yellow, red, blue. Thank you. I have a few more. So this is another ekphrastic piece. I went to the Margulies collection in downtown Miami, and it's amazing, amazing space. And I was, again, writing, it was for an assignment, but I was alone, and I never found myself in such conversation with a gallery where every piece spoke to me. And I found myself, you can't touch the art, but I found myself being touched by the art. So it's a play on that. And it's based on the art by Anselm Kiefer and by George Siegel. It's called Please Don't Touch the Art. Hold this salvage of stone in your hands. Applique your knees with pebbles. Learn the heft of Paris in pieces. Shrine to the resurrection of ruin. Disrupt the Jenga of lead and canvas, coax the film strip out from the pyre, pull it free from the gritty crevice, pull on the boa of still frames and hold it up to the light. Sit beside the woman shelled in plaster, lean over, unwrap her bandages, reveal the soft center and uncrook her neck after years of looking down at knuckles and knees. Walk along the welcome mat of coal, strike a match against the stove your abuela warned you about, feed the line of men with remnants of the soul that broke them, the soil that broke them. Straighten the clutched hands, brims twisted by the plea in their fingers, skin so hard now, no softness left after begging for so much less than what it cost to memorialize them in bronze, marble, plaster of Paris. So one of my inspirations, here's an assignment, go to Poetry Besties, is Dustin Brookshire. And he couldn't be here tonight, but he sent me love anyway. And I love him so much. And this is a poem that he inspired, and actually a poem that started out being about a Barbie dream house, but turned out to be about my mother, because most of the time the poem knows before you do. In defense of my mother, who never bought me a Barbie dream house. I was too young to understand just how young my mother was when she worked the night shift at TRW, building spacecrafts with her hands. Too young to know how it felt to hand over the whole of her check to my father, who gave her an allowance, $10 after 40 hours. $10 he'd drop into her palm every payday. I understood Barbie called the shots. That dream house was hers. Ken an accessory, sans the authority to tell her what to do. I wrote 31 letters to Santa that year, but he wasn't in charge. My father was. I thought I stood a chance because mommy loved Barbie's mid-century mod A-frame too. How the chalet gleamed up at us from the slick pages of the Sears catalog. The wonder of real jalousie windows and wall-to-wall carpets unfurled on the kitchen table where she calculated just how long she'd have to lay that chalet away, just how much she'd have to beg to convince my father to pay. I watched her turn the page, no dog ear to save her place. I'd like to say I was happy with the Barbie dream plane she placed under the tree instead, but I blamed her. It would take years to understand. She didn't want me to dream of staying put. She wanted me to dream of flying away. Thanks. I'm going to read two more from Tortillera. Thanks so much, guys. This one is, well, I don't have to tell you what it's based on. You'll know. I don't eat plums anymore. I could call you, but either way, there'd be too much to break to fix the ache that is your name. A good day is measured in minutes I have not thought of you. All this to say, the tree we planted has borne fruit, but I misplaced the recipe for plum preserves you left behind. I have forgotten. You were so cold, never as sweet. Thank you. And for my last one, I'm going to read Uncoupled. The morning she flung the earrings she gave me out the door and onto the grass, I dropped to my knees and tried to recover diamonds from a patch of earth battened down by dirt and rain. When I found one, post and back intact, I saw it as a sign. We too could be saved. We too could regain what we both had discarded. She watched me there, stooped from the search, denim knees besotted with mud, stains I never did get out. And we both know what remains, one widowed earring, waiting to be repurposed into pendant, stick pin, brooch. But what I can't recall is why I stopped the search before I found what was lost, why I decided I'd had enough, or why she didn't search too. Thank you. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Caridad. It's always amazing to hear you read, and I like it when I hear things I haven't heard before too. But I always love hearing all the poems from Tortillera. I never get bored, so you can read them all day to me. And I dropped the link in there if anyone wants to purchase the limited edition hardcover of Caridad's book. I don't think there are actually a whole lot of copies left, so you might want to hurry if you do want one. Okay, so last but certainly not least, we have Dior J. Stevens. Dior is a proud Pisces hailing from Midwestern waters. Me too, I'm from Midwestern waters as well, but I'm a Cancer. Sorry, not a Pisces, but we're similar. He is the author of the chapbooks Screams and Lavender. Is it 001 or how do you say that? I want to make sure I got it right.
001, 001.
Thank you. 001 and Canon. Their debut full-length collection, Cruel Cruel, is out now with Night Books. Have a copy of it right here. It's amazing. Everyone needs a copy of this. They happily serve as the managing poetry editor of Foglift Journal and Press. You can find them on Twitter at Dolphin Neptune and Instagram at Dolphin Photos. Let's give a warm welcome to Dior J. Stevens, everyone.
Thank you, Nicole, and thanks, Caridad and Steve, for reading alongside me. Really great to meet you guys virtually and hear that incredible, really beautiful work. Yeah, I'm going to read, similarly to my friends here, some stuff from this book that just came out that I'm so happy about, and then some new stuff, because it's fun to read some new stuff when we have some time. I'm going to start out from what I call the middle vortex section of the book. It's perhaps my favorite section. This first poem is for, speaking of favorites, one of my favorite dogs in the world, a fellow Pisces, actually, Bear. So this is 4/03/2020. HES. 2 black ravens, 1 dog, 1 man, resting amongst topaz weeps for companionship. I am not who I am, who I was, who was I when I was. I am the dolphin in a mask, in plain view. This next one is part of a series. This is Interlude Alpha. Thank you. Light reflecting by the orange moon of my last heart, Tell me how the wind chimes from 6 miles down the past, feeling the same songs sung overtime, 6 years running, Apollo landing in this Saturn return. A sweet picking of scabs, a bright towel brushed over 9-inch knife wounds, reflecting strands of feminine joy passed down the 3-line. Tell me how nectarful the forward 6s march. Tell me the prize has upped its elemental, till the marble tumbles and the moon sinks, till the past passes, till then, till God, till Willie, till Murray, till all the cups have been spilled. I'm going to read another one from this section, a few more actually, thank you. This one I don't read too often. This is 409-2020. Sweat and musings, tastes and slight scent up into stratosphere eyelashes, plums like cherries and cherries like tomahawks, saints clad in jocks, traps and innumerable cloudy days, liquids and oozings and mucus and droplets and contact and pitfalls and masks and daggers, hedonism and silent charges, fumbled promises and squeaks that light homes on fire, a silence of the hum, a humming in the silence, a silence in the humming. This next one, thank you all, thank you so much. And shout out to Nightboat for printing this really beautiful book. I love my press so much. 411-2020, how many licks does it take till you get? To light the lethal touch, silk like Magdalene, nectar like Lewinsky. To crave weapons of mass insemination, folk like Barry, sizzle like Long. This is the next of the interlude series. This is interlude beta. I spill my body languages out willingly onto your concrete walls, an 8-count of rapture, a falsetto for 90-degree bends and tongues spoken into themselves. Here, in the palace of ancestral irony, we knock borders until the courtyard slips on her nightdress. You close the shutters because this ain't a ritual for listening. It's a lambasting of every smashed piano that made you a man. And don't I croon for you? Like so, like a caretaker of a half-widened well. Trusting rim spokes, cause the syncope ain't synced in since the Sunday of half memory. Looky here at the pot calling the kettle a salt fiend. When you move, don't forget to leave trinkets of your treasures with those who trifled it. Gray wash mornings planning permanent residency, residing on lines anxious to be redrawn, cackling fire pit forests, anticipating another hot, hot, hot summer. The streets cutting up and the lines getting long again. Frail fraughts brought back to the shores they exiled, a coconut with becoming hairs, oasis of the kingdom. 11:15 a.m., listening to warm tones. Sun baby sent a honeybee to watch me from the window, but I smashed it with my sting. Fear has become the primary motive of the categorically denominated. Thank you, friends. Thank you. Trying to figure out, oh, okay. This is a longer one. It might be the last one I read from this section, but is probably to me the queerest poem in this book, despite, or maybe not in spite of, but in alignment with the title. This is 4/14/2020, To Be or Not to Be Not, Queer Fag, Sweeter Than Machino. Begin in reflection. Mirror possibilities, little biddies, staring brown-eyed in reflection. Waltzing home, plastered to the moist plywood skin of men, holding you up just to lay you down. Reflection corduroy boots. Reflection of corduroy immaculate, slapping you harder than any fly ball. There's still sting in our gums if you glide across them ever so. Reflection unruly, tepid, and masochistic. Reflection so farcical, your peanut gallery breaks Oshun in the stands. Reflection R, reflection B, reflection so. 2 months reflection that you'll never look into without Cuervo bravado. Deciding to think post-fissure now. Reflection in Wisco Hayward mist, found flowers wrapped up in jasper cases, reflection so high I praised Mother Gaia. Reflection's last pages tumbling blindly into an aftermath of reflection, crisp Sierra, lighting nostrils on mint, ever green, ever violet, ever rage. Reflection anchor into skin, skin crave, skin fold, skin graft, skin patty cake. Reflection under salted shroom submarines, breaking big cash into brittle bones. Trust me, trust baby reflection. Sink skin into reflection. Stay in church at least 4 hours too long, reflection. Hide and go get me a lobotomy, reflection. Oh, Sado reflection, Pybit reflection, Mykonos reflection, baby reflection, unwrapped decencies coiled round your protuberances, reflection. In the name of the water and the salt and the fever, reflection. So it's super fun to read. That is definitely the queerest book or queerest poem in this book to me. Maybe the theorists will have a different theory one day. I'll read 1 or 2 more from this book and from the final section, and then I'll get into some new stuff, which I'm really excited to read. I think I'll do this one. Or actually, I've been winging it lately. I'm enjoying just like winging it entirely and seeing what energy flows for me. Yeah, I'm gonna read this one. This is UIP 7. If you like plums, this is for you. Plum honey, plum smooth, plum overabundance, plum spiral, plum meritocracy, plum hay beetle, plum weight of all, plum overturned, reinstated, redefined, plum shiver like honeybees, plum sachet in the golden swat, plum interruption from the sub-dimension, plum rutabaga, plum sacrifice on Mole Hill, plum belief that one day the signs will be clear as frost, plum fish likes nothing raw, plum fool, plum irony, plum meat that grinds and redefines, plum suffrage for an overdue spring, plum honeysuckle, plum, what waste is implicit in fruition, plum might, plum direct, holy, holy. Pretending at something, plum split open, purple pus, playing computer, pillowing dry palm, praying sideways, praying more, because possibly pirouetting up riptides with a pumpkin-headed prissy boy, pristine in painted neons, pretending and polling and proclivities. And now I'm going to leave Cool down here and read some new stuff. Thank you guys for listening and excited to share some new work for what is probably the first time. This first piece is from a poem that a friend of mine, Jason B. Crawford, another incredible poet, invented, and I tried it, and I think they hate it, but I like this poem. I don't think they hate my poem. I think they hate their form, but I am going to read this, and shout out to Jason. This is a refusal, a subject. There would be capital, alms, and silence on the counter to counter the silence of a body only alms suffice. Only a body may freeze before the counter is received. Before the body frees, bones wrestle themselves into consent, a consent wrestled into form like a balloon before God. And like a God, form fashions itself into waking paralysis, a demon atop a chest, itself a fashion of imprisonment of the I, imprisonment of the self, a sentence sentencing a subject into an imprisonment of submission and silences, sentenced on the counter, a subjectivity. That is first of the new ones, and that felt good to read for once. That was really fun. Okay, got a few more here. This is from a new series I've been working on, Sometimes, the Sometimes series. This is Sometimes 6. This right page, yes. Yes, sometimes sacks of wealth were thrown at Swiss-hold hearts towards flash-struck eyes. Sometimes a mountain of snow made a face forget itself, left to search through a pool of mirrors for recalibration even water couldn't contrive. Sometimes the tongue delirium into the bloodstream, a holiest form of devotion, cloth-stripped bodies, and a kaleidoscope hallway of hollow touches. Sometimes the mind flurries back to pockets of dazed remembrance, the vortex of serenity that can only be found in boom-based chaos, virility, and sweat. Listen here. It don't take much to make a grown man cry. I got 2 more for you guys. Thank you again for hanging out, listening. This is shout out to Miss Mary, who was a family friend and like a babysitter for me. I mentioned her earlier in a previous poem and is a recurrent figure in my work. And this is a poem for her and her kind of discovering my queerness at a very young age. Miss Murray. Miss Murray, did you see the sweet first? Or the sweetness behind the sucrose after years watching a special brand of boyhood brotherhood form, you saw it then, reported sweetness for its stank, sang like a bad all by yourself canary, and I can't be mad, I don't think I'm mad. You fed me the best goddamn rice I've ever had. Something magic rubbed between lorries and butter. I wonder, would you love me now? Would you love my sweet? And this is the final poem I will read for you guys. Thanks again to Nicole for inviting me, and happy Pride, everybody. Let's have a great next 30+ days. This is To Build a Boy Home. And every time I take a pause, you can presume I'm saying the word boy or silencing that word. To build a home, a wraparound porch, dewy sunrise greens, grass is my oracular, a playground of wooden logs and willow vine swings, sets my tongue on the onyx of a man, to build a man, to father along me, a family, cut from the cloth of normative, soaked in pastels and pistachios, to build a dream, a walk through water, to build a man of mountains and good earth, a supple soil to pour into, unafraid of deluge, to build a pillar of yang, an institution of faggotry, of 2 lovers, 1 sound, to build a home for a face of emerald and starlight, to half my 6, to make a clearing of trees and nan neighbors for miles, to chuck chuckles across the pond and into the night, to 2 stories, a kitchen of orange and umber, to build a dream, to write a vision, ear-locked and blinded, a garden of sunflowers in the back, to build a home for birds, and thank you all so very much.
That was so amazing. Thank you so much, Dior. You really brought the fire. I mean, for being a water sign, that was a lot of fire. So really impressed with you. Thank you so much. And we have about 10 minutes left. I tried to reserve just a little bit of time in case anyone has any questions for our readers. And if you don't have questions, we could also just use this time to any shout outs of any upcoming events. I know, for example, Steve is working on an anthology for Rocky Horror. I don't know if submissions are still open for that.
Yes, but yes. So I run a press called Fortine Press, and we are taking submissions for a anthology of Rocky Horror poems, since the 50th anniversary of that very queer movie is coming up next in 2 years. So I'm just dropping it in the chat now, and I thank you, Nicole, for mentioning that.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
If anyone has any questions, you could either pop it in the chat or raise your hand, or any announcements that you want to make. I know Judy and Michael have reading series. I know Dior, you're editing for Fog Lifter, and Caridad, you've got a lot going on too. Any announcements or anything anyone wants to share? Let's just use this time together. Go ahead, Judy.
On June 20th in the evening at 7 o'clock, we will have a reading for South Florida Poetry Journal, and Tennyson Black and Jackie Craven will be reading. So I'm really looking forward to hearing their work. And it's been wonderful to hear everybody today. Thank you.
Awesome.
So I'm putting together the Escribe Aquí Festival in August, and Judy Ireland will be one of our poets in residence. And basically that's a festival that celebrates intersectionality in work. And this year, I chose mostly queer artists and allies. So, doing the quiet work. So we hope that, keep an eye out for what I post. There's going to be amazing artists, and we don't know what it's going to be yet, but there will be a community event celebrating all these voices and their work and what we did. And I'll send you an email, Judy.
Anyone else? I actually have a question for Dior really fast. I'm familiar with Jason Crawford's work to some extent, but you mentioned that they have a specific form and you read your poem that was inspired. What did you say the form was called?
Great question. I remember more about the structure of the form than the name of the form itself that they have then since renounced. But it basically was, let me make sure I can see it again. Is it 10 lines? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines. And each new or subsequent line had to use, I believe, 5 words from the previous line. And then which was a struggle. I ended up really enjoying it, and they kind of hate this form, and I think I kind of like it. So shout out to Jason for giving me this new form to work with.
Well, it sounded really good, and I heard a lot of music in it. That's why I was curious. I wanted to check.
There's a lot of exact math that they would know better how to explain, but that's partially why I kind of latched onto it too. The equation of it is very situated nicely.
Yeah, and it just sounds really good to the ear too. I like repetition, so when I hear things repeated, it's musical to me. So I really liked it. I can look it up. Okay, well, if no one has anything else, I'll give you back 6 minutes of pride. And I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. And the series is the first Thursday of every month at 7. So haven't completely solidified the July lineup, but I'll be announcing that soon. And I'm going to also pull this off of the cloud recording, and I'll share it on social media so that you can share it with your friends, families, and fans who weren't able to be with us. And once again, thank you all so much for being here. Have a great Pride celebration, and be well, right? That's the whole name of the series. So I wish you all well, be well. Thank you so much again. Appreciate you all. Have a great night.